together.
Hey, man.
How you doing, sir?
Oh, what's that? What's
Stay seated. You're going
They told
You're
me
supposed to get up and shake the
They told me not to stand up.
Oh, they did?
Show them some love.
It's the day.
Welcome, gentlemen. Good to be with you today.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for being willing to join us in this time. Our hope is to share the oral history of ECOM and urban impact from the hearts and minds of the leadership, from the executive directors.
You mean like from the beginning?
From the beginning. In fact, why don't you kick us off? When and how did you start this thing?
The origin story.
The origin story. You know, that goes way, way back to the 1900s. Yeah, it did. It started in, 1987? When it all kicked off. Actually, it started probably in 86 with a trip to Mendenhall, Mississippi, just to see what Christian community development was all about. They asked me if I would ever see myself doing something like that in Seattle. I thought, well, that's a rural ministry. Does that even work in an urban context? So a friend and I took a trip down, and after that week of being there, observing all that they were doing and the heart and passion that they put into it, I thought, you know, something like that might work. And then I learned about the work being done in Chicago, then in Dallas, and then there's some work in Philly. So I said, I guess it can work in the city. And so we came back in 86 and just started dreaming about it and praying about it. And then 87 is when we
Who was
pulled the
we?
plug.
Who was we?
The we was my wife, Andrea. The we was a Ken Hutcherson.
Oh yeah.
He was the one who asked me if I would ever consider doing this, and I thought, really? And Mark Webster was a part of that as well. And then when we connected with the Christian community development people down in Mississippi, Lim Tucker was a guy we invited to Seattle. Actually, I think, Ken, were you at that meeting at Bethany Presbyterian Church?
No, the first meeting that I was at was when we hosted the launch meeting at UPC, University Presbyterian, in Calvin Lounge in 87.
Okay, so
In June of 87.
So prior to that, we held a meeting at Bethany Presbyterian, and we invited Westminster Chapel. UPC was there. Might have been Art Beals who came. We also had Overlake Christian Church, and we just shared the vision for what we thought we were going to do here in Rainier Valley, and asked if they would pray about their engagement involvement. And naturally, we asked that there could be some financial support as well. And that's where it really began. Then you're right, we had the launch meeting at University Presbyterian Church.
I actually remember, so just south of here used to be a restaurant called Colonial Pancake House.
Ah, yeah.
And I remember sitting in that restaurant, having breakfast, and you had a bunch of acronyms on a piece of paper, and you were wrestling with, what do I call this thing? And you had, I think econ was one you wanted because economic development was something on your heart, and so you had econ as one of the. You had all these different acronyms, and I don't know if you landed on econ that day or not, but that was, and I think that was spring or summer of '87. I feel like that was before you launched, but right in the middle of it, you were talking to Antioch. You'd gone to Mississippi, and you were in that mix. You had just left the Young Life staff.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're really kind of pioneering this space.
You know, initially I thought all that we were privileged to do through now Urban Impact, originally Emerald City Outreach Ministries, we called it ECOM for short. And that was before e-commerce was involved.
That's right. That's right.
Before e-commerce was involved.
You were always ahead of your
We were
time.
e-com, right? Yeah. I was going to say, as we were working on that, you and I used to pray together
Yes.
when I was with Young Life.
Yep.
And you were there when we started
Back to 1985. Actually.
praying this thing out, and that was a great time because we were just dreaming about what that could be. And actually, what I was going to say is, I thought all that we had been privileged to do, I would do under the aegis of Young Life.
Yep.
Because they were a little more open to doing something other than just kid work. But as it turned out, they weren't that, excited about that possibility. They thought it'd be a little too broad, which is what really led to the beginning of the ministry.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if I recall, I think the meaningful kind of transformative conviction that you had from where you were in Young Life to movement towards ecom is that you had the conviction that we had to go deeper into the sources of where kids' lives, you know, in Young Life, you're interacting with the youth,
That's right.
And you're dealing with downstream issues with youth,
That's right.
The behaviors, the perspectives, the worldviews are all shaped somewhere else. And then Young Life comes along and tries to present Christ in the mix and reshape that around centering on Christ. And your conviction was, we got to go and get at that before, you know, the youth is downstream, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So we got to go further up the river. And your conviction was, it's families
Yes,
and it's community.
that's right.
And that was the
Yeah.
conceptualization of ecom.
Exactly
and
right.
Impact.
Yeah. And want to do younger, want to be holistic.
I'm inclined to yield to you, Ken, because you like chronologically, you were the first executive director. I'm like, how did you get involved? But I think for me, that was one of the appeals, families, community, but also leadership, the youth leadership, and the idea of them being leaders among their peers, but also in community. And so I was working at a nonprofit in the Central Area Motivation Program, now it's Bird Bar, and had just kind of reached the apex of whatever was available there, and was looking to extend my reach and career, and so the executive director opportunity came available, and so it's always one of those things you wonder. So was it me who found them, or they who found me? But ultimately, I think it was God's movement in all of it, and at that time, I was stewarding the Central Area Neighborhood Plan. So when I was doing my research on Emerald City and Rainier Beach, saw Harvey's name as part of the planning team for the Rainier Beach Neighborhood Plan. So I was kind of in that urban planning, kind of youth development, organizational development kind of mode, and just needed to just kind of expand the horizon. So got in to the interview process, and was blessed by the success of being able to join the organization. And one of the things that I have here is the first annual ecom annual report, and so that's 1999 to 2000, and that's when I started. The blessing was coming into a brand new building that y'all built. That was, and the point you made earlier, Ken, about Harvey being ahead of his time. This is a tribute to that, because this is one of the newer developments at that time in the neighborhood, and the impact that it created to create other development and have other people have a sense that they can do this too. Is something that is associated with. Pastor
Now,
Harvey.
Ken, you were the first executive director. When we got to 1992, we had the unfortunate incident happen where a fella kind of embezzled about a third of our income at the time. We had a small budget then of about $120,000, and only to discover that the fella had been siphoning off of that fund for about a year in some very devious ways. And so we thought we needed to do something to change that, because we had high trust, but we didn't have real controls in place. And I learned a hard lesson, that even with people you trust, you need to have some controls in place to maintain the integrity of your organization. At that point, we thought, well, let's get somebody involved who can help manage the day-to-day operations. And at the same time, we were talking about this not being a standalone parachurch organization. We really wanted it to be local church connected and based. And so we made that decision to put more energy into the development of what became Emerald City Bible Fellowship. And then we would have this separate 501c3 Emerald City Outreach Ministries, at which time we invited you to become a part of the organization. Thus, you became the very first
Oh, yeah.
So
he got
executive
invited.
director.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Not
he said
I
we
recall.
thought. He said we thought. I think it was just he thought.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Actually, Steve was a part of the team, and
That's a whole other
That's
story.
a whole- yeah.
I'll get there.
I wasn't waiting for an invite. I was posing an idea that didn't go very far.
Well, I was in the room in 1987 when you launched at UPC, and I really wanted to be part of that, and you were gracious enough. You formed a board, and I was
Joined the initial board, yeah.
privileged to be on that initial board.
yeah.
And from that period of time to when I finally came on, we were a scrappy little group. I mean, I remember having board meetings in our dining room, at the dining room table in our home up the hill in Columbia City before it was the hip Columbia City. It was a crazy Columbia City. But yeah, I mean, we were a scrappy little, organization, and we, had a 5-member board or sitting around the table, and we had that, what seemed at the time just a catastrophic event of this colleague of yours walking away with 1/3 of our income, and I had that was just a total, piggybacking on your sense of God's movement in your life. That was a total God call on my life to make that transition, because I was in a very comfortable place and so forth. But I had been under the conviction, the fact that I was living in Columbia City, I was under this conviction in my life. Dr. John Perkins was kind of a literary mentor, and then later I got to meet him and know him a little bit, and he became a personal hero of mine. But Kimber and I moved to the neighborhood under the 3 R's, and so when you invited me to be a part of the staff team, I just couldn't. There was no in me. It was a sense of fulfillment. Like, this is the next meaningful, logical step in my life. However, the start didn't go real well. The startup didn't. There were 3 things that I remember. 3 things that I remember really well about the startup of that. One is the office was over the thrift store, the
Union Gospel Mission bargain
thrift
store, yeah.
over on
Bargain center.
Martin Luther King and Othello. And I walk in my first day, and Harvey pointed me at my office. And literally, it was a square room, nothing in it but this orange leather chair, dark paneling, and this orange shag carpet. Nothing else. Nothing. And we found a phone. We plugged in a phone, and it took me about a week to kind of get it out. So that was kind of a.
when you got that, didn't Union Gospel Mission gave you, like they said, you can clear out this space that was full of junk.
And
once you clear it out, you can use it as offices.
That's right.
I didn't. I came right before the clear out. I mean, right after the clear out. So the space was cleared out.
Good timing.
It was very good timing. And literally, we had the folks who built the the bus tunnel. One of the company, a donor, said you can come down and pick up furniture at our offices, and we walked in, and he said, just take whatever you want. And it was a portable construction trailer full of file cabinets and desks and chair, nothing mismatched. You just kind of But we were able to. We felt like kids in a candy store because it was office furniture, and so we probably found that leather chair buried in.
I love that orange. I love that orange leather chair. I love that. It's so unique. Yeah. So that was kind of my first experience coming in. That was a bit rough coming from where I was.
Quite different.
Yes.
To say the least.
The second thing is, I think I was there maybe a couple months, and we had some surprise visitors. Do you remember the surprise visitors?
Yes.
So, as we alluded to, this former staff person had walked away with about 1/3 of our revenue.
He helped himself.
But what we what we had discovered when we dug into that is that about 2/3 of that was tax payments that should have been paid that weren't. He had absconded. He had, cooked the books and did the shell game, and so we had significant tax liability that we had to face.
Didn't we?
So,
Lock it down.
so about 2 months in, we had these two IRS agents show up.
Unannounced.
Completely unannounced. No phone call, no nothing. And they came in and wanted to know what our plan was. Well, by God's grace, we had started to develop a strategy. We had networked a little bit, and we had arranged for a loan through a community bank over in Bellevue. And so, by God's grace, we were able to, forestall any action against us. But that was an intense. That was a.
Oh, very intense.
I had a couple days of some bullet-sized sweat on my brow on that one.
Now, prior to that, Steve and I, along with another sister who was a part of the organization at the time, started really looking into this because we were told it was one amount,
Yeah.
which was probably a quarter of what it turned out to be.
Yep.
And as we did the
Dug
digging and the research, we discovered, man, it was a quarter.
A couple of long nights, one all-nighter,
Oh.
just looking through and just kind of discovering, hey, did you know we bought a, it was a painful,
Oh, we did that?
yeah. We were,
So we have some equipment where?
Yeah.
Now, what was really triggering for me when the IRS agents came in, we had just raised a ton of money for our summer program.
Yes.
Remember, we used to raise extra money, hire high school students,
Right.
and certified school teachers, and
Yep.
high school interns, and
Our
we had
summer
just
academy.
gotten that money. And it looked like we had something there to pay them. We're going, oh, no, we can't do this, man.
let's shift gears. I think it'd be great to talk, to spend some time thinking about what were the major movements that happened in the eras of leadership, because there's pretty significant pieces that were established. In the early days, we launched the Summer Academy. There was a group of Presbyterian churches called the Greater Rainier Urban Ministry
Partners?
Program, or Partners.
Grump.
And it was called Grump. Grump.
Really?
And they actually have, I have a notebook in my office that's like Grump. And and they were thinking about education. And they helped us launch a tutoring program. We had launched a tutoring program. They had launched other tutoring programs. Each of the Presbyterian churches down the valley, all about a mile apart, launched these tutoring programs. And they were working together on education. They had the idea of starting a summer program to bridge the summer learning loss. You mentioned that internship, the summer learning, and so we tied in with Grump and launched our first summer academy. We have a picture on Harvey's desk of about 70 kids and volunteers or about 70 people up on the bluff of Brighton Presbyterian Church, and we launched Summer Academy. Those first Summer Academy years was a brand new program in partnership with this Grump, the group of Grumps, and they were kind of older, white, kind of, you think of grumpy people. That was kind of the Grumps people, but they did some revolutionary things. But prior to that, or in the process of that, we started Rainier Live, our first youth. We did middle school and high school kind of youth engagement, and that was the core of kids that became the first interns. 1990.
Don't forget TNT now.
TNT. Oh, excuse me. The Thursday. Well, tied to the tutoring program, we did education for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then we would take a break, feed a meal-ish snack, and then go into the Thursday night thing. The kids named it. They said, "Are you going to keep doing the Thursday night thing?" So we called it the Thursday night thing, and we would do it. It was a children's ministry. It was kind of the dream that Harvey had of when Young Life couldn't go deeper. It wasn't able to go into education. It wasn't able to go into children's ministry, and both of those we felt like were foundational to meet with families. And the volunteers of those two programs became the first attendees of the adult Bible study that became many of the first attendees that became the Emerald City Bible Fellowship, the church. Yeah. So in that era, you had Rainier Live, you had TNT, you had the tutoring program, you had the summer academies, those all kind of launched.
Yeah.
And the summer academies and education support has continued to today.
Yeah.
We're still, wrestling with that summer learning loss and carrying on those
We are,
programs.
we are.
So those became really big elements of that era.
Yeah.
In partnership with Brighton Presbyterian Church
Yeah.
and other churches.
And the Summer Academy became an opportunity to build a summer employment program for our youth. So we developed this internship program for high school and college age kids in our community. Integrated some kids from outside the community.
Yep.
And that, for me, for the arc of time, that the 7 years that I was here, that was one of the most powerful, I think, dimensions of my experience personally, to interact and relate to those kids. And then also to think about who those, they're approaching 40 years old.
Oh, they are.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're 40 years old, and they have families and careers, and it's just so gratifying to see what these young people have
Yeah.
become.
And that's one thing that struck me. As I'm listening to this, I'm realizing that I was here 1999, 2004, really during kind of a transition period, because we had to start, and then, of course, we had Steve coming in after that. But when I came, I was interacting with those young people at the
That's right.
apex of their discernment about their futures and their creativity, and I can recall, and I'm probably going to name some names, right?
That's all right.
Being in a meeting with Ashana Elbers, right? 2 hours, just grinding, because this is the quality of people that we have, and they're not just going to settle for this guy coming in trying to redirect. They've got this foundational thing that they're pushing it, and didn't know though that I had a approach where was both and, so bring it. And
Yep.
so we're thinking about Michelle Lang
Yeah, no.
right now, and so the transition period also created kind of a contracting of organizationally. I think we probably lost a major donor, and that kind of created some experiences where people had to separate. But one of the things that I remember is the quality of those people feeling confident that wherever they were going to go, that they were going to succeed.
Yeah.
And so now we named just a couple of names. We
Yeah.
talked
Oh.
about Asa
Shauna we
Miller.
called Swoosh. Remember? Shauna was Swoosh, because she was a track athlete.
Yeah.
Talk about Asa, because he's
Yeah, Asa. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think Asa was exiting kind of while I was coming in, but he was part of that group, and I've just heard recently that he's over in Gambia, Senegal, serving in a diplomatic role, and back then he was doing an internship at Global. What was the relationship
Yeah.
with the organization that did? I don't know, this Global Impact. There was some place
Yeah,
that he
that's
was
right.
at that just, and this is when he was early 20s.
Yeah.
So he's 40 now, and he's in that station. Yeah.
And some of those young people you guys are referring to, they are attorneys now. They're school psychologists.
Yeah.
Prosecuting
Some of them are
attorneys.
MBAs, prosecuting attorneys.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible to see, and that because we would always say we can't pay for college, but we want to inspire you and encourage you. And along with the employment piece, or it was really about, remember, we wanted to teach them leadership from a biblical perspective, but we realized they needed to earn money in the summer. So we combined the two ideas. And then we had the idea of giving them $1,000 scholarship for every year they work with us, which we held in trust for them until they actually finished high school and got into college.
That's right.
And that was a really important part, and you were right in the center of that whole thing. And the other thing that really hit me in that era was we had all the family stuff happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Marriage
had
retreats
the
and-
marriage retreats, which were, I still have people asking me today, years later, are you guys gonna ever do a marriage retreat again?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're attracting families, because again, we were trying to do something other than just work with kids.
Yeah.
Wanted to go upstream and help families and encourage marriages and fathers and
Parenting
mothers. and-
workshops.
Parenting, yes.
Yeah.
Parenting workshops.
We were out to lunch yesterday, and a young lady walks up and says, "You probably don't remember me, but you gave me my first job." And her husband's there. He was around the youth programs and was connected. And we know him from the neighborhood today. It was her and her family basically gathering, and she was one of those
Wow.
one of those kids.
That's
There's,
gratifying.
you think of, we take a lot of pride in Romanita Harrison, who's now the CEO of the Murdoch Trust,
CEO.
sitting over billions of assets, managing to support. She was a
She was
kid.
our first intern.
She was in an economic development project, a T-shirt printing company
Very beginning.
that we tried to do that failed miserably.
Yes.
And she's succeeded, and her partner is building houses, and has given significant amounts of money to a local church to support the work that they were doing.
The
And,
business failed miserably, but the program
The
succeeded
support.
beyond our wildest imagination.
Beyond, way beyond, yes.
What were some of the things, Ken, that happened that were like mark the era? I can think of the Early Childhood Development Center.
Yeah, I think
This building.
I think that what we did early, that I think was revolutionary for how ecom developed from that, is we started with the mission statement. Do you remember this? Early on in our process, we started with the mission statement, and we asked the question, well, how can we deconstruct that mission statement into actionable areas of engagement in this community? And we already had a lot of things going, and most of it was kind of youth-oriented, but then we kind of built out, what are some of the other streams of engagement that we can build on, and that's where, and we kind of actualized or operationalized the mission statement, right, into certain lanes
Ken's
that
giving
we
us
could.
a lesson in leadership.
Yeah. So, and then we started building it, and we started raising money, and we started hiring staff that could do it, and that was kind of hit and miss. I mean, we had some massive hits. I mean, you've mentioned Michelle Lang. She was an incredible hit for us. She started as an administrative assistant,
That's right.
and she was horrible, a horrible administrative assistant. But what we decided is that in this context, we were just going to hire talent and wait till we could find a role for them to play. And that's exactly what we did with Michelle.
Yeah.
We knew she was incredibly talented, but the only position that we had available was administrative assistant.
But we knew she would not stay in that position very long.
And the trigger, I don't know if you remember this, the trigger was that I came down, we were in the brick building next door before all this. And I came down, I had my office upstairs, she was down in the main space. I came down, she was at her desk, and I noticed that she had a box of envelopes underneath her desk. And I said, what are those? And she got very sheepish. She got, she was, it was like she was caught. And they were the receipts, our donor receipts that should have gone out 2 months ago. And she just didn't like doing it. She just didn't like doing the receipts, printing and data management. And that was the moment I know we had to make a change as soon as possible. And we shifted her into this really innovative role, and she built this incredible, that she's still doing today, called Heart and Soul.
Heart and Soul.
Which was a performing arts. And, we could have, our youth work could have taken a lot of different shapes, but because of Michelle and her extraordinary creativity, she created that ministry.
Now the Axon Stage Theater
Axon Stage.
company that we can't take ownership of, but Michelle kind of got the ramp up and the dream and the vision. I think of the Technology Center. You started the first kind of, we actually way back at the Bargain Center days tried with I don't even know what you called those machines.
I call them the Jurassic Park computer labs. It was.
Well,
that's where
and we
computers
hired
Go to die.
Oh.
Katrina Cathcart. You guys hired
Yeah,
Katrina Cathcart,
yeah.
and she developed one of the first technology centers to teach computing to kids and families and guys in rehab. And she moved into this. You guys continued that in this building.
That's right.
As the technology
We
center.
started Emerald City Jobs to help folks in the community find meaningful employment.
Yeah, that technology piece is so powerful. If you can just visualize early childhood development classes coming into the technology
Those big
center
mouses.
to sit in front of computers. And
Big mouse.
as I think about it, we got to add a little element of this work having broader impact than it has, because that's when the city was just getting into its digital information technology work and trying to make access to the internet free. And so here's a model here in humble beginnings here that I'm sure has wound up having impacts in other parts of the
We were Taft before Taft.
I was talking to a guy who'd been at Taft for 18 years last week, and we were talking about this building.
Yeah.
And I said, "Now, were you around? Because Taft helped." He said, "Well, my brother wired that building, like with all the technology infrastructure, not the electronic, not the what do you call electricians, but the computer technology, the cables that wire this building was high school students."
That's right. Yeah.
That were in a Taft education program. That kind of partnership, that I think you created that piece at that time, and had that happen.
Well, actually, Katrina did, because she was sitting. I remember sitting at the table in Columbia City, and she was already part of that work. And I came in and we looked to kind of connect it broader. But Katrina said
One of the things I remember about that was we did have, I said it facetiously, but it was an old technology, old stuff. But when we got to the brick building next door before we built this one, we had a friend who walked in and said, and he'd start talking to us about technology. What do you really want to do? Da, 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 da. And we described it to him. The next day, a check arrived in the mail to cover the entire cost of upgrading that thing and making it a state-of-the-art.
Because that was pre-PC
technology.
days.
Yeah.
That was some kind of computing format.
Yeah, we had it was old stuff, and we really didn't actualize it. But when Katrina got involved, that's when it really started to take shape and form. And it was interesting because as we dreamed or dreamt about stuff, God provided what we needed.
And people and money, yeah.
And people and money, and it was just this. It's been an incredible journey and story in that sense of how God has.
It was an incredible entrepreneurial, season for us, and we grew. I mean, we grew.
Tell us about moving. Your kind of swan song here was this building, and the church had purchased the land.
Oh yeah.
And tied in with the Evangelical Covenant, and
Yep.
then you guys together raised the capital to build this community impact center.
Yeah.
That then, literally, Gregory moved into, right?
That's right. I did not cross over into the promised land. I did not
That's
cross
a
over.
great characterization.
I made a transition just as this building was being completed, and but this was about a $3.5 million building at the time, and we envisioned it as a church-based community center, because ECOM was a church-based community development organization. And so now here we sit here, but the rest of this building was all about engaging the community, as is the church, of course. But the rest of it was all about, creating a space to further actualize the work that we were doing.
I don't know if there's another worship place in the city where the worship center is actually upstairs and not downstairs.
Why is that?
Because we were committed to addressing issues that plague families in this community. And we wanted this to be a place where community can come and be resourced, and if they needed to use space. So we said, let's make downstairs the space that everybody comes to. Because we were, most typical churches meet once a week. They might meet twice.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, let's put that upstairs, but let's make downstairs this place where people actually come and can be served.
The first thing you come in the door, the first thing that was there was the computer center, and to the left was Emerald City Jobs.
Yeah.
So everything that, the way that we positioned this building to the person who encountered it was, hey, we're here for you and this community. And please come and find your way to the church, but we start here where your felt needs are, where you live your life in this community. We're here for you.
And that's where we had to be thankful to the Emerald City Bible Fellowship, who owned the property.
Yes.
Actually financed most of it, but they designed it with this community outreach in mind, which was different too, because it wasn't about the church first. It was about the community first. In fact, when we Barry was around, when we found this property, we had a community meeting with our church, and we said, can we see ourselves using this property for something other than just building a church?
Yeah.
If so, let's purchase it. If not, let's not do it.
Yeah,
'Cause
that was a great appeal to me and my family, because we came here as an employee with Ecom, and then ultimately started visiting the church, and then learned that the church actually came out of Ecom.
Yeah.
And so when you have a church that has this community heart, it's really hard to resist, right? So now, the children come in and they grow up here in it. And when I left Ecom, there seemed to be a question, is he going to stay at ECBF? Of course, we're going to stay at ECBF. And just because we depart from the organization doesn't mean that we're going to leave the ministry. And because of that appeal, that idea of the community.
What were some of
heart.
the things that community heart that you speak of? What happened in your era of leadership? What were some of the? Because again, there's some pretty big initiatives that spun off, that grew out of that time. That you moved into this. Ken and Harvey helped kind of build this building as a community impact center, designed the ideas, but you really actualized it, moved in and saw it kind of grow and birth.
Yeah, well, again, I got to give credit to the staff that was there that wound up still being part of the group. Vita, that's really what helped kind of carry. Because, you come in as a new executive director, I didn't necessarily look to take the agency by storm and move it, because there was this talent already
You
there.
were so wise, so much wiser than me.
I didn't say that.
I just put words to what he was thinking.
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind, and one was a departure from the traditional approach that Ecom took, and that was, seeking a grant through the school district to run the community center, the learning center at African American Academy. But it just seemed so natural because Andrea was there, and you had experience with the building and trying to support the African American Academy, and the organization up to that point, relied heavily on individual donors. So then, and there may have been some contracts with the school district to do tutoring and that kind of thing. But to get into that whole community learning center outside of the organization, receiving resources from entity like the district, it was a little departure, but it just seemed to be still straight down the middle of the foundational elements. The other that's probably understated, I did take a real critical look at Harvey's role in the organization. He was president, he was chair of the board, he was the lead pastor, he was the chair of the leadership committee. I was saying, maybe we can relieve him of this board chair role for Ecom, and change that up a bit to release some of that pressure and stress and work. And it was a structural change organizationally that goes understated, because it's in the muck and mire, nuts and bolts of an organization. But I thought structurally that was an important one for Ecom and ultimately what became Urban Impact.
That was from my vantage point, a really important season because, Gregory, I felt that you brought some management tools to our organization that we really needed. Because, you talk about leadership. Yeah, leadership can be visionary and entrepreneurial and all this stuff, but at some point you grow to a place where you need to have a bit more organization, a bit more management. And
We were a mess. I mean, the whole entrepreneurial thing is messy. It is messy.
Well, it is.
Yeah, and you really came in.
And you
established some things.
brought some of that balance to who we were, and that was really necessary in that season.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll ever forget that contribution, because each of you have made critical contributions to the life of this entity, which, as I transition out of this, will probably never, ever forget.
I think I had landed at Union Gospel Mission, Director of Youth Services, and was able, I remember telling Harvey, I'm not leaving our vision or our mission. I'm just going to add the resources of UGM to kind of keep building it. But we partnered together so we continued to do summer academies. We partnered on a program called Urban Roots that we had kind of developed in partnership with the Perkins Center at Seattle Pacific University, and begin to connect those high school those interns that we had continued that summer leadership idea, and now partnered those programs together. In your era, you guys were a significant part of the launching of the Vision Youth project that Michelle became a critical player in. The church got a youth leader funded through, and World Vision ultimately ended up taking over and leading that program. But the Leadership Foundation had kind of launched it. They were living next door in the old brick house while after you guys moved it, and that Vision Youth project happened during that era, and were a critical part of.
And I'm realizing a lot through this conversation, so it's a blessing to be here with you all. And I'm thinking about that and thinking like, okay, so I wasn't part of the faith community that you all had created a foundation for when I came in, and then Harvey kind of sought that and created that, and what I wound up doing was then extending the organization's reach into the neighborhood, and forming a partnership. We were talking about organizing organizations in the neighborhood because we knew we had a neighborhood plan, and we needed some folks to kind of rally around that. And again, Harvey's name was on the document. He was there, part of it from the beginning. So kind of also had to seek that going. And now here it is. I'm running the organization that started organizing organizations called Rainier Beach Action Coalition. So there is also something to this work, nurturing other opportunities and experiments and activities, though, that are still impactful. So I'd like to see some kind of visual that kind of just talks about the constellation with ECOM, ECBF kind of in the middle, and what has spurred.
Interesting.
See there's that management thing going on.
System
Get that system thinker. But it was for me, it was interesting that we had, I think all of us had the openness to collaboration. In our heart of hearts, it was never really about us. I used to say there are some things that we initiate, and there are other things that we encourage. We initiated those things that we could actually do, but if we had a vision for something else that we could not do, how do we encourage others? And I think collaboration could be one of the monikers that people put on us, because we did try to reach out and to bring others in and to share resources, which is why we did the 9th grade support homework centers with Rainier Beach, Cleveland, Franklin High School, and the district. They paid us to do that, and that which followed, because the precursor to that was the after-school program that we ran up at the African American Academy, AAA,
which grew to the after-school program that we ran through your. I think that era influenced that we did a learning center at Rainier Beach High School.
That's right.
We did a 9th or 8th grade bridge program when Rainier Beach High School was getting ready to close. One of our team, Glenn McCrae, had the vision to, what if we convinced all the 8th graders to go to Rainier Beach to help save Rainier Beach as a school, and started the 8th grade bridge program, and started connecting in, and created a learning center at Rainier Beach to receive those kids and connect with them. Our name's not on Rainier Beach High School or that, but the influence was there. There was a number of those collaborations. Covenant Housing was, one. We didn't start our own housing program at that point, but we partnered to see. It was kind of a Habitat for Humanity type project that Harvey sat on the board of. We recruited volunteers to, the Divine Makeovers that now I'm going to forget the Pastors Coalition group.
CCDR.
The Coalition for Community Development and Renewal, that, Pastor, you were a part of helping start, the founding pastors that grew that organization, that really was the auspices and the umbrella for Vision Youth. That's for right. Another housing, built 3 houses in the now new Columbia City area that fostered relationships among churches in the community, and a number of major projects that are the influence is in your the ripple effect of your leadership and the leadership of the teams that came around this mission, and that idea of doing things together and collaborating. I mean, really, Grump, that Summer Academy project,
Grump.
At one point there were, I think I counted 10 summer academies happening in and around the valley, and we had
About 350 students at one point.
we had 350 students in Ecom's program, but there was probably 1,000 students that were in summer academies that we weren't controlling or owning, but were spurred on by that collaborative idea. The kids, the staff that partnered around Urban Roots.
Another reflection of that I recall is that we would give our staff away to schools in the area. So, for instance, Michelle became, she was on the staff at Rainier Beach High School in the performing arts program there. At Haskins, we gave him as a basketball. We funded his position.
City All-Star Weekend.
And Emerald City All-Star Weekend, that was a lot of fun.
Middle school coach at Aki Crossi.
He was a coach. We gave him Swoosh. Shauna was a track coach. We gave her as our staff paid for a position at Rainier Beach High School as a track coach. So it wasn't ever about trying to amass resources and bring the community in and to us. We always were seeking to catalyze something out there, which was terrific.
Wow.
And it came from your spirit and your vision to be able to see that if you're concerned about who gets the credit, then you're always going to constrain what you can do. But if you don't care who gets the credit, then there's no limitation on what can happen. Yeah.
Well, the fact that you're sitting here with us today, and I have the joy of participating with Gregory on the board of the Rainier Beach Action Coalition. You and Harvey have been having breakfast, I understand, once a month or once a week for 20
Forever.
years or something, and connecting.
Way back when we were youth.
Ken and I were talking yesterday about how, in the role that he's leading, and how they've developed an outcomes measurement tool, and how that might have some influence and shape and help us think through where we are in wrestling with that. We have this mantra that it's all about relationships, and it really has been, that kind of
All about
connectedness
relationships.
and relationship.
Yeah, positive relationships. It's about what we can do to inspire others to engage in a way that brings about transformation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we're not concerned about building an empire and to use some Christian ease, it's about building a kingdom. Then you're right. It's not about who gets the credit. It's about the work that's being done, the impact that it can have. And what do we do to lift? Because we're constantly trying to figure out how do we augment the positive, counter the negative, so that we can be the best community anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and that's our enduring challenge, because I'm not sure I can name someone presently who's able to articulate the way Harvey has, just what he just said. And that is compelling. It draws you in. And longing to see, okay, that's what's going to be missed. And that's the thing that appealed to me and my family, and has wound up, by extension, appealing to all others, is just that ability to craft the language, to describe, to motivate, to inspire. And obviously there's something inside you that, when you use the word collaborative, that you kind of saw in us, that existed, and that was one of those elements that needed to exist to realize that vision that you had. Yeah, and it's interesting, as all the things of significance we talked about, I probably left so many things on the table, and probably could just start running a list, but I do have to shout out Emerald City Commons as a significant ministry and body of work, and the support that it created in the community. And so I was just thinking about that and just had to get that on tape for no other reason, because it's something that's just...
Well, when I came on
substantial.
as the executive director, I don't know who launched the first project. There was an Emerald City economic development center. There was plans. We had registered plans with the city
right. They're in-
to
yeah,
build
graphic in
in the north corner of this property a business complex and a kind of economic development
Yeah.
center
Yeah.
that we had to
right there.
redesign, revise,
Yeah.
and so that we could use the building, and it became Emerald City Commons,
Yeah.
which also holds Rainier Health and Fitness,
Rainier Health and Fitness.
which was another significant piece that when we merged, we haven't really talked about the merger. When I came on in 2004, I have a joke that Harvey and a local pastor who had another nonprofit in the area, Northwest Urban Ministries, and Paul Over, was meeting with Harvey, and they were both talking about the fact that they didn't have leadership. They were both in pastor leaders that were also stewarding nonprofits for that season, and they were looking for leadership. I came on as the executive director. Northwest Urban Ministries hired an executive director, and then they started talking about merger because they still lacked leadership. And I always joke that I thought we each hired organizations, but we created this merger. We took those two nonprofits with a similar heart and passion, merged them, and became Urban Impact. Neither group wanted to be taken over, so they were younger than us, but they didn't want to become Ecom necessarily. We thought it was time to kind of rebrand, and we went through a branding exercise with the person who now serves as our chairman of our board, who was a marketing consultant, and became Urban Impact. We were in the middle of the branding exercise, and we were kind of stuck. We were really close to becoming Urban Hope. And Harvey said, well, I used to do a television show called Urban Impact on Sunday night, whatever what kind of
Radio show. Call it, talk show.
Talk show, and he would have it was called Urban Impact, and it just clicked. And we were like, okay, that's who we become, and we became Urban Impact in 2005. The name change. We're still the same 501c3. We just submitted for a name change from what Ecom was. So Ecom didn't end. Ecom just got a name change, and we became Urban Impact. And under that, they had started Rainier Health and Fitness as a project in the neighborhood because we were noted as one of the unhealthiest zip codes in the region. And two young guys who wanted to find a place to work out and had to drive 20 minutes to Renton to find a workout club said, what if we launched a workout club? The church, again, this collaboration piece, loaned these two young guys $400,000, or loaned Urban Impact $400,000 to expand this fitness club and launch the fitness center that's in between the two buildings. They're here in Emerald City Commons, and that became Rainier Health and Fitness. And we've kind of grown and built on that model. And I would say grown and built on the model of empowering young leaders. You mentioned Ed Haskins and Michelle Lang and Glenn McCrae, who was serving as a high school intern in the Africa, and as a summer intern, became a program lead under your leadership in the African American Academy. Took on this whole idea of church-based community development and launched two more hubs other than just what was happening here at Emerald City Bible Fellowship under his leadership. He was hired by probably an intern by you and carried on as a program director.
He was an intern my last year.
Under Gregory, and I had the opportunity to see him flourish and grow from so it's that kind of believing in the vision of young leaders and really not just following them, but seeing them flourish in their ideas, and those things grow from there. And I think that spirit still continues. Glenn also launched an urban arts center that now houses the local office for Youth for Christ, and Mike Davis, who Rainier Beach Action Coalition and us are partnering with. There's just this kind of interweaving and collaborative piece that continues to grow and flourish.
I'm still waiting for the roller skating rink and Dick's Drive-In. Still waiting for those.
Now that they're expanding, they might be open.
I don't think we ever won the survey. We did make an attempt at the Dick's Drive-In. I don't think the roller skating rink.
No,
we tried to fill out the surveys to get Dick's to move a Dick's Drive-In down here in Denmark. We were thinking next door. Yeah, we're trying to.
Next door. Well, all I can say is that I believe that what we did was just scratching the surface, and there's more to be done. And I believe that God's going to enable us to do that. Because again, there's more people that need to be lifted, inspired, and encouraged so that they can begin to see for themselves what God sees in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's promise and possibility.